Hi everyone, this is Annalise, coach with Team TNT. Today I'm addressing two really important topics for ensuring accuracy when you're tracking your food. The first is how to use a food scale accurately. The second is how to read a food label with accuracy. Our very first topic is about how to use a food scale. This is a standard food scale. It's very similar to many that are on the market. What you'll see is that it has a kind of standard normal base and it is usually digitized. It also has a base where you can put all of your cups, your utensils, your bowls, and plates. This is actually the measuring component, so it normally has a very large surface. Now let's go ahead and go through the motions of actually how to navigate one. Every standard scale should be situated on a flat surface. Additionally, every scale is going to have an on and off button, so normally you have to wait a second for it to zero out. This means that it's ready to be used. There are different modes that are available for measurement, including grams, ounces, pounds, kilograms, sometimes even milliliters or fluid ounces. Typically for our purposes, we like to just keep it simple and stick with grams. When you have placed something on top of the scale and it's giving you a reading for measurement, the tare button is also known as zeroing out, which means that you can go ahead and measure for that value and bring it back to zero so that you can apply more material to the scale for measurement. The very first tip that I'm going to share with you has to do with baking or cooking with mixed ingredients. One of the key things to remember, for example, when baking a cake, is that you have to bake the cake inside of a pan. So if you look at the back of the box and you're trying to figure out what are the total macros for this cake because I end up putting it in a pan and how do I weigh everything, that creates a lot of confusion. One easy way to cut out a lot of confusion is to go ahead and just take your empty baking dish, turn on your scale, and then go ahead and measure that weight. So if we put this on top of the scale, we end up getting a general measurement for the entire pan. When we've mixed all of our mix together or the rest of our cooking material and we put it inside, we cook it, we bring it out and let it cool, we can get the total weight for the entire pan and what's baked on the inside. But we've already been pretty smart and we've taken note of this number for the pan, so we can go ahead and subtract the weight of the pan from the total weight, which gives us the weight of the food that's been cooked on the inside, which is what correlates with the back of the nutrition label for your total macros. The second tip that I have for you is in regard to liquids. A lot of liquids on the labels actually list out ounces and milliliters. One really helpful tip, milliliters is 1-for-1 for grams, which means that you can just go ahead and convert milliliters straight to grams and you'll never miss a beat. Most labels list it as 240 milliliters or 240 grams is what's listed for the nutritional information on the label. In order to pour myself a serving, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my scale and wait for it to zero out. Then I can place my cup on the scale. What you'll notice is that it already reads 10 grams and I'm not actually going to drink the cup, so I need to make sure that I zero it out using the tare button. Now that it's brought to zero, I can go ahead and pour myself a serving. A serving of this lemonade is 240 grams, so I'm going to be mindful to watch for that number. So hopefully those were two really helpful tips. The first was for how to use a baking dish and to manage that weight for baked or cooked items, and then also how to use a scale step by step for doing something like pouring a beverage. Now let's go ahead and move on to how to read a food label and to actually look at serving sizes. Reading food labels can be surprisingly tricky. We have two items that we're going to address first because both of them have labels that are really important to read to make sure that we're tracking with accuracy. The first thing that we're going to address is boxed items that require other mixed ingredients because there's special information on the label that we should look at. We're first going to start with an item that is supposed to be very easy to use, but when you look at the label, it can actually be very complicated. We're going to start with the basics though. Really important things to note: the serving size. It says 3/4 cup, but that can be pretty hard to measure out, so we're going to go ahead and pay attention to the grams. One serving is 76 grams, which yields about 1 cup prepared. However, there are 2 servings in this entire container. So when we look at the rest of the information, what we can find out is that there are 2 grams worth of fat per serving. So there's actually 4. Total carbohydrates, 53 per serving, but there's 2 in the entire bag, so there's actually about 106. Fiber says per serving there's 3 grams. There's actually 6 because there's 2 servings in the bag. And then protein, it lists 8 per serving, but there's 2, so the total for the bag is 16. It's really important to read the directions that are on the package. In these directions it says add 1.5 cups of water and 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil or margarine. It says that this is optional. So what you'll notice is that at the total fat, it says 2 grams per serving, and then there's a little star. It's really imperative to make sure to read the information that's listed with the star. What this says is that for the entire contents of this package, the mix itself has 2 grams. However, if you add this 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil or margarine, it tells you that it adds an extra 50 calories and 5 grams worth of fat. That's really important to remember per serving, because then what this number becomes is an additional 5, which makes 7 grams per serving. So for the entire package, it becomes 14. The next example that we're going to explore is a bag of flavored My Oatmeal from myoatmeal.com. This nutrition label is pretty easy to read. The serving size is 40 grams, and with 40 grams we get 3 grams of fat, 29 carbs, 4 grams of fiber, and 3 grams of protein. While it's pretty easy to understand how to read a nutrition label, sometimes going through the process of actually serving yourself only 1 serving can be a little bit tedious, and many people don't measure their food. However, it can be really important to achieve goals and then also maintain accuracy with tracking your food. Many people like to go ahead and fill their bowl according to how they think that they feel when they're hungry. For example, if I weren't tracking, this is the type of bowl that I would fill with oatmeal. Let's go ahead and take a look at what 1 serving actually looks like. So after reading the nutrition label, we know that 40 grams is the accurate serving size. So we're gonna go step by step to figure out what does 40 grams actually look like. We're gonna turn on our scale, wait for it to zero out, place our bowl again. We're also gonna zero that out because we want accuracy. Now we're gonna go ahead and measure out 40 grams worth of oatmeal. Now we have our 40 grams. This is about the amount for 1 serving. Let's take a look at what I intuitively poured for myself without measuring first. What we'll notice is that it still says 31 because that's the weight of the bowl. This bowl is the same, so it should work just fine. The number is 111. That's a really big difference from the 40 grams listed before. This is incredibly important for tracking and accuracy purposes. This is our standard 1 serving of 40 grams, which yields 3 grams of fat, 29 carbs, and 3 grams of protein. Whereas this was the intuitive bowl that I poured, which was not meant for tracking for accuracy. This bowl was measured at 111 grams, which would yield 8.3 grams of fat, 80.3 grams of carbs, and 8.3 grams of protein. That is significantly different from the 1 serving size of 40 grams. As you can see, it's really important to track as you go to ensure that you're getting towards your goals. Again, thank you so much for joining me. We're gonna have more segments that are upcoming, so stay tuned.